Hello, classmates. This is James McCann, graduate student. This is my final for our COMT 591, Communication and Socialization, and it is called The Effects of Hip Hop Music and Videos on Adolescents and Young Adults' Perceptions of Sex, Partnership, and Relationships. Great. Beginning with the introduction. The main topic here, the main question is, do hip-hop music and corresponding videos negatively affect viewers' perceptions of partnership, relationships, and sex? Some important points on the negative aspects I mentioned. Some of those aspects are misogyny, which is well known to be prevalent in hip-hop music a lot of the time. Objectification of women. As we know, hip-hop music, especially the videos, can be very physical, and women are often the objects of that physicality. The next point is heteronormality, which is promoting the idea that heterosexual relationships are normal and the right course for two people to follow. A very large majority of hip-hop music focuses on a man singing about a woman, or vice versa, but typically the first of those two. And finally, the last important topic is rape myths. That is exactly what it sounds like, the false ideas about sex, such as that a woman's clothing determines her willingness to have sex or unwillingness to have sex. That's the mindset of people who say, well, a woman shouldn't have been dressed that way, or etc. So moving on, here are some points about the importance of this topic. First of which is that hip-hop music is notorious for misogynistic lyrics, degradation of women, and, like I mentioned, objectification of women through portraying them physically and only physically, for portraying their worth as physical. Another important point, according to the research, is that younger viewers are more susceptible to the messages, especially the negative ones, in the music and the music videos, because the reasoning behind this is that obviously younger people are much more impressionable, as we learned about again and again in this course. And that includes being impressionable to negative messages as well as positive. And another interesting point is that the negative messages I keep talking about may be more prevalent in certain minoritized groups. For example, hip hop is more prominent with African American groups than in Caucasian groups in the United States, as was mentioned in my research. Something very important to remember there. Moving on. The first of the studies I read about was called Does Exposure to Sexual Hip-Hop Music Videos Influence the Sexual Attitudes of College Students by Kistler and Lee. This study examined college students in the Northeast and how much they viewed hip-hop and how they absorbed what they saw. They used a post-test only group design with random assignment to assess the data. And the main conclusion was that male viewers are much more susceptible to the negative aspects in hip-hop, the ones I mentioned, such as objectification and rape myths. And the reference is below. The second of my two studies was the relationship between sexual content in music and dating and sexual behaviors of emerging adults. And this study examined how hip-hop and R&B, note there is that this study focused a lot on R&B in addition to hip-hop, how the artist's public image affects viewers' perceptions of gender and sex. They used a questionnaire with several red herring questions to deter participants from guessing the purpose of the study ahead of time. So they asked about several other genres to make the study seem more general when it was actually about hip hop and R&B. And the main conclusion was that an artist's public image indeed influences the consumer's perceptions of the material. So artists like Notorious B.I.G., NWA, pardon me, and Kanye West, the life they live, the image they present, is also influential to the viewer. Which another way of saying that would be that the artist doesn't just put the music out into the world and then vanish. They have a part in promoting the ideas themselves, not just through their work. Something very important to remember, I think. So my proposed research question would be, how does long-term hip-hop viewership affect adolescents and young adults' views on gender, partnership, and sex? So my specific areas of observation would be attitudes toward male relationship dominance, which is big in hip-hop, of course, objectification of women, rape myths, and heteronormality, like we talked about. My proposed method would be a mixed method survey, quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative portion would ask about participant demographics, how much they consume hip hop, and their dating history. It might seem a little personal, but this is an intense subject. And then the qualitative portion would be questions about their personal views on dating, partnership, and women, such as, does a woman's clothing indicate her willingness to have sex or not to have sex, like I mentioned before? And an important note on this, that both sections, as per my second study I reviewed, would contain red herring questions to deflect attention from the study's purpose. That would counter the phenomenon of participant bias. And one question to throw in would be like, how often do you listen to country music or rock? And my study would contribute to previous research in that, while most studies in this area have been quantitative, mine would lean more toward qualitative to get information directly from the participants about their attitudes instead of just coding quantitative data. Also, my study would focus a lot on the effects of viewing heteronormality over time, which I think is an under-observed topic in these kinds of studies. Thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. Thank you for a great semester, and I hope to work with you again soon. Here are the references below.